You're listening to the We Are Libertarians podcast network. Find all of our shows at wearelibertarians.com.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Enemy of My Enemy. I am Hodey Jones.
I'm Lou.
And I'm Brian.
And this is the show that brings you hot topics, great debate from the left, right, and center libertarian perspective. First order of business, we will not be discussing the pursuit of happiness with Larry Sharp today. He stayed up probably too late partying at the trash prom. No, I don't want to say what it was.
I'm gonna in Caitlin here and say it was trashy prom.
It could have been trashy prom.
No, I'm jealous. Really, that's all it was. I'm jealous, and I wish I was there.
Yeah, so I apologize to anybody expecting that. I did unfortunately find out about the cancellation today, and I made the switch as soon as I found out. But I understand some people are probably like, I'm here for Larry. Where the heck is Larry? Sorry. All you get is us pasty folk. We will talk to Larry another day. We do look forward to that, so that will be grand. About the opposite of pursuit of happiness, we're going to talk about Kyle Rittenhouse instead. We're going to pursue a lot of tragedy. Now, I am going to preface this whole thing by saying that if you are polarized by this, if you like to lose friends over this subject, this is probably not the episode for you. We're going to examine this from a lot of different angles here. Like I said, this show prides itself on having a lot of opinions and a lot of perspectives. And a lot of those may be perspectives that you disagree with. This subject, it's COVID-like in that it's kind of people see it as an indictment on Black Lives Matter, or they see it as an indictment on self-defense, or try to make it 100% about one thing or another. And this is about as gray areas get. So we're going to explore them. I'm sure that my co-hosts are going to get to it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to talk about some hard facts real quick, so we're all on the same page. And then we can talk about kind of our perspectives on this. So the Kenosha unrest shootings is what they're called. Happened in Kenosha. Now, the more famous incident that happened in Kenosha was the reason all this unrest happened, was the Jacob Blake. If that name doesn't sound familiar to you, he's the one that went into his car and the cops shot him in the back like 7 times or whatever it was. He's paralyzed from the waist down. Should he have maybe reached into the car? Maybe not. Did the police have a right to shoot him 7 times in the back? Definitely not. It was a very poorly executed situation, and it was a tragedy. And I think it's important to recognize it for the tragedy that it is. And so that made some unrest in Kenosha. Now, the day before, a car dealership suffered, according to the business owner, it was $2.5 million worth of damage. According to the people paying them, it was $1.5 million worth of damage, as far as like insurance and whatnot goes. It was an Indian American owned car dealership. And the owner, I guess I don't want to say took to the public radio waves, but certainly was public about saying, I need protection, right? Now, did he specifically enlist Rittenhouse? Did he specifically enlist the police? I don't believe he specifically enlisted anybody. He just didn't like the fact that his car dealership was mostly arson. So this wasn't even theft. This was just, he was upset that he suffered $1.5 million worth of damage, and reasonably so. And that leaves us to Kyle Rittenhouse, who responded to that situation. He shows up earlier in the day. Most of the videos that we have are kind of from nighttime. There's some incidents before then that are kind of on video, kind of not. There's some dumpsters set on fire and rolled towards a gas station. We are told by police that Rittenhouse was there offering first aid to the people who were injured, and there were several injuries. What's funny is Rittenhouse was part of 2 shootings, but there were actually 5 different shootings other than the Rittenhouse shooting. It's just those didn't have victims. They were mostly just shots in the air and nobody hit. And So it's a wild scene. Anybody who sees the videos, you've got a lot of gunfire. You see a lot of defaced buildings. The buildings that knew it was coming have mostly been boarded up. Rittenhouse is there discussing the NAP with the non-aggression principle with two other folks. He does in a video explain to the police that he works at the car dealership to get to the car dealership. He did not work at the car dealership. The police do say to the defenders, hey, we appreciate what you guys are doing, on the loudspeaker. So where the incident really happens is away from the dealership, because actually, while much ado is made about that situation, there actually is where it starts going down is the police actually secure the car dealership, and Rittenhouse, the first incident happens just outside of a gas station. He is seen running by the gas station. There is a shot fired by a third-party pursuer. Joseph Rosenbaum tackles Rittenhouse. He does try to take Rittenhouse's gun. Rittenhouse shoots at him reportedly 4 times. 2 of those shots hit. One of them hits him pretty nasty in the chest. They're talking about like liver lacerations, and I was looking at the autopsy report earlier, and that shot may have been fatal. He also hit him in the head, and that one was definitely fatal. There were some people on the scene who tried to put pressure on it, and he was definitely not what I would call any kind of conscious. That incident itself stemmed from an earlier incident. Rittenhouse actually, somewhat unfortunately, dressed what looked like another officer, not on purpose. I don't believe he would have known what that officer was wearing beforehand, but this officer actually used a fire extinguisher to put out one of these dumpsters, and Rosenbaum got upset with the officer. They do have videos of that. And then he sees Rittenhouse and believes that Rittenhouse is actually the one who put out that dumpster fire that Rosenbaum, I don't know if Joseph Rosenbaum set that fire or was part of it, but he was very upset that it was extinguished. And he confused Rittenhouse for that incident, which is why he was going after Rittenhouse. There is a bag that is on fire that is thrown at him. A lot of people are like, oh my gosh, that's a Molotov cocktail. From what I understand, it was like a bag with like a couple of toilet paper tissues and a thing of deodorant. It was a weird thing to throw at somebody.
The light behind the bag hit the bag. It was never on fire.
It was never on fire. Okay, so the light.
Yeah, it was never on fire. It's just it was the reflection of it going. But it did look like from the video. I mean,
sure.
First glance was like,
yeah. That's a little bit less of an incident because he doesn't even turn around at that point. So it's like, but there are people chasing him, throwing stuff at him. Rittenhouse does get himself separated from his group. We don't know why. Maybe inadvisable, but again, I'll leave that to a matter of opinion as far as why he's there and around the gas station. So that's the first shooting there. And then the next one is he's running down the street. He's running away from the shooting. He's being chased by a very large group. He trips. He does trip on his own. And then according to the breakdown, one person kicks Rittenhouse. Ritten fires at him, but he misses. So that person is not hurt. Another person, Anthony Huber, then hits Rittenhouse with a skateboard in the back. Rittenhouse turns and shoots him once in the chest. It is a fatal shot, and that does kill Huber. And then another person takes out a handgun and approaches him. It's being aimed, but it is not actively aimed at Rittenhouse, but Rittenhouse fires. It shoots him in the bicep. He is not dead, but I mean, that bicep was a grisly injury for those who saw the video. There are racial slurs for whatever reason yelled at Rittenhouse, both from the videotape person and by Rosenbaum. I don't know why they felt the need to call him the N-word, but he is several times called the N-word.
That is thing.
What's that?
That's odd to me. I don't understand it.
Yeah, that's and especially because it is a Black Lives Matter protest, and I'm gonna get into Joseph Rosenbaum during my thoughts, but for now I'm just gonna go through these so you all can get to your stuff. But yeah, the person hit in the bicep was George Grosskreutz, I think it's pronounced. Let's see. Let's finish off here. He then continues to run towards the police. He then slows to a walk. He raises his hands. People are yelling at the police that Rittenhouse is the shooter. They're saying that N-word is the shooter. That guy is the shooter. He's the one that killed him. He's the shooter. The police, and it's hard to say where their mind's at, but they kind of ignore those cries and they let Rittenhouse walk right by him with his hands raised. It is, at least according to the video chatter, or not the video, the chatter that is caught on the video, you can hear them talk about clearing the way to the victims. So at the moment, the police are more concerned, and maybe rightfully so, about getting to the victims. Although you'd think it was a large police presence, you'd think one of them would at least have the presence of mind to be like, what, this guy? Okay, can you hang on real quick? But they kind of weren't listening to the crowd. I guess that's just how it goes. As far as Rittenhouse's charges, the person who kicked Rittenhouse, who Rittenhouse missed, Rittenhouse is charged with a first-degree recklessly endangerment with a deadly weapon. For Rosenbaum, Rittenhouse is charged with first-degree reckless homicide and first-degree reckless endangerment with a deadly weapon. For Huber, Rittenhouse is also charged with first-degree homicide, and for Grosskreutz, Rittenhouse is charged with first-degree attempted homicide. He's also been charged with failed to comply with a curfew and possession of a weapon under the age of 18, which is illegal in the state, of a deadly weapon, or a dangerous weapon is the phrasing. Yeah. Dangerous weapon, which is illegal to do under the age of 18 in the state. You know what, Brian, let's start with you. What are kind of your thoughts and perspectives on this situation?
Kyle Rittenhouse is guilty of possessing a weapon under the age of 18 and being out past curfew. Definitely guilty of those two items. So let me just put that there. Should he have been there? Hell no. But he was there. So the next question is, was Rittenhouse justified in shooting the gentlemen that were chasing him? And I want to use the term there, chasing him, because that's what every single video shows. Rittenhouse is not charging towards them. Rittenhouse does not have his gun out, pointing at them, running at them. He doesn't even have the gun out, running away from them. In every single video shows Rittenhouse retreating. Now, you can say he shouldn't have been there with the gun. He shouldn't have been there at all. We can definitely make those arguments, and those are definitely big moral discussions. But the question is, does he have the right to defend himself in the face of imminent danger? Now, let's go back to Rosenbaum. Not knowing, I'm sure these two did not see each other. I have no evidence that before that actual incident that they had seen each other. Rosenbaum was there. He was at the protest. There is video of him saying, "Shoot me, N-word," repeatedly to the armed people that were there. So he wasn't there for, hey, I heard there's a rave going on or anything. So he was a protester. He was there for a reason. So, and yes, he got out for a psych eval. But unfortunately, he was there. He was chasing Rittenhouse, as we know, that he may have confused Rittenhouse for an officer that put out the dumpster fire. Threatening to kill someone because they put out your dumpster fire, especially with a gun, yeah, that probably deserves another psych eval. But, we have hindsight 2020, anger of the moment type of thing. The question is that if someone is chasing you and appears legit, not, oh, dude, I'm going to kill you, but I'm going to kill you, no matter the situation, do you have a right to defend yourself? Whether that's with a weapon, whether that's with a car, whether that's with a bag full of apples, do you have the right to defend yourself? And the answer has to be yes. And it's not just morally this is the case, but it's also Wisconsin law. Wisconsin's law has an affirmative defense in the case to defend yourself against imminent bodily harm. Now, of course, people can make the description, Rittenhouse shouldn't have been there, and because he was in possession of a firearm under age 18, that all goes out the window, except for one critical piece of Wisconsin of the law, which says that any sort of provocation, any sort of, you point the gun at somebody and, and they start chasing you and you run away. The minute you run away and aren't pointing the gun at them, you have the right to defend yourself. The whole idea behind that law was to prevent people from like, hey, someone broke into my house. I'm going to go ahead and point a gun at them. As they're running away, I'm going to shoot them in the back of the head. So that's the whole point of that law. And that's the whole point of self-defense. You are defending yourself from imminent danger, not danger that's running away from you. The second video of him being chased by a mob, I would really like to know anyone who is looking at that video and saying, oh, they were just trying to escort him or perform a citizen's arrest. It's really simple to look at what happens to people that get beat up by mobs. It's not pretty. And for the person that says that being hit in the head with a skateboard is not a terrible thing, Google skateboard being hit in the head death, and you'll see a nice little list of people that have died from that. I cannot think of a reasonable jury that's going to look at those two videos and say that Rittenhouse was the aggressor, Rittenhouse had no fear of bodily harm, and that Rittenhouse didn't try to get away from the situation. In all three of those, he was not the aggressor, he was not trying to look for a fight, and he was trying to run away, and a crowd was chasing and catching up to him. So in all three of those shootings, it's unfortunate, and it's unfortunate the situation happened, and he should have never have been there. But in the end, those are all justifiable defenses for the charges that the state has thrown at him, except for possession of a firearm under the age of 17 and being out past curfew.
Lou, your perspectives.
Ugh. Lock him up. No. Okay.
Let Jesus sort it out. No.
I think he was, in his mind, defending himself. Probably so. Like, on a legalistic level, probably. Mm-hmm. Do I think he went looking for this? 100%. And when you look back at some of like the little interviews and stuff he did on, prior to, as things were building, you can tell he was like, yeah, I want someone to come and, make me defend myself. Like, that's how it came across.
Right.
So I don't was this like pre-planned? No. But he knowingly put himself in a situation he should have never been in. He did not have the training to be in. He did not have the maturity to be in or anything. I mean, like, from a legal standpoint, as an anarchist, like, I want to be like, yeah, 17-year-olds can have guns and do whatever, right? But as a parent, your ass would have been at home.
Yeah.
Like, first of all, I don't know who his parents are, but they should be on trial.
Single mom.
Okay, yeah, she should be on trial. We should be talking about that. How can you allow your child knowingly, because apparently she knew about this, this is what he was going to do.
Yep.
And I think the big problem I have with Rittenhouse is you can see the beginnings of some right-wing extremist in him. And then after this happened, then you get the right-wing extremists making a hero out of him. And it's disgusting. The kid is not a hero. He's an idiot who didn't know what he was doing, who doesn't have the brain development to make those kind of split-second decisions in that kind of scenario. He had no business being there. Mm-hmm. And that's my biggest problem. On a very technical level, was he defending himself? Probably. There's a couple of things here. So I guess there's sort of this building of the situation, because there's the initial interaction and shooting, and then there's him running away and people chasing him, right? And we have a scenario, and we all know what mob mentality is, right? It's catchy, and everybody kind of you lose your shit and you just sort of follow the crowd. And people there, I think, genuinely believed that he was the aggressor in the first incident. And so they were going after him to stop him. But then it sort of snowballed, right? And so people see people chasing someone. They hear someone else yell, hey, he just killed this guy, and all this stuff. And so there's not a lot of facts in the moment. And there's a lot of emotion in the moment. So everybody going after him and this, that, and the other, like, someone, obviously the police should have stopped Rittenhouse. I almost think this whole thing would have been better if Rittenhouse would, you know, when he had some distance on these guys, would have put his gun behind his back, put his hands up, and turned to them and said, hey, I'm not a threat to you. I think before it got to be like people coming in from the sidelines not knowing what was going on, I think he would have done better to go directly to a police officer instead of walking past them. Like, something. There's so many decisions that he could have made better, starting with not being there in the first place.
Right. He was on the phone during the first shooting. If you watch a part of the video, he was on the phone saying, I shot someone, and they said, get out of there.
Right.
For very good reason. Number one,
absolutely.
Get out of there, not as in we're going to hide you and send you on a plane to Bulgaria to never be found again, but for his own safety. But number two, he went running to the police with his hands up. He wasn't trying to hide and going up to the police. Just drove right by.
Right. But he didn't work real hard to get them to stop for him either. He was like, bye.
I'll be honest with you. He's carrying a gun. He's got his hands up. I don't know what else he's supposed to do at that point. That kind of falls on Kenosha police to stop and go, why does this kid with an AR-15 have his hands up? Hey,
probably a lot of them had already seen him and talked to him. So
right.
They knew who he was.
Right.
And like in a lot of cases, and I've seen this before because I do have a lot of friends who have gone to events as like frontline protectors for like BLM stuff, right? Mm-hmm. And a lot of times what they'll do as sort of like to let the police know, like, I am not a threat, even though I have a weapon, is they will do exactly that as police are coming by. They will do exactly that, you know.
And I get that. Yeah.
The hands up, don't shoot, right?
Yeah, but in this case, you see him running to the police. And the other thing I do want to kind of bring up here is that this was in the comments, that when you cross the state line, that it's all illegal. Kyle Rittenhouse worked in Kenosha, not at the car dealership. I believe he was a lifeguard. So when you live in these kind of big town, and I don't know if any of you are familiar with the area. I grew up in Chicago. Kenosha's just across the border, literally.
Right.
And a lot of people.
South Bend. Niles, I can spit and be in Michigan.
Right. And that's the thing.
In a border town, those sort of things get a little gray.
Yeah. I went through St. Louis, and that thing is freaking cut in half with state lines. I mean,
well, it's got the Mississippi, and then of course everyone goes to East St. Louis and dies.
It's so true.
Yeah. Okay. I wanted to bring that because that is a legit thing people are coming up with and saying that, well, the second he crossed a state line, he broke the law. And I'm going,
state lines are imaginary.
Yeah, it's all, hey, come on. The libertarian you should be embracing the whole cross that state line. Go do whatever you want.
Right.
But
I good about it.
I did want to address Ashley's comment that when you purposely seek out violence, it's no longer self-defense. Well, the question is, Rosenbaum was seeking out violence on Rittenhouse. The other gentleman especially the one with the skateboard, was seeking violence on Rittenhouse. This wasn't a, whoa, buddy, stop, let's have a chat. This was a person coming at you to kick you in the head, hit you with a skateboard, and another guy to try grab your gun, which you can see he's got a gun right there. Right. So I'm kind of sitting there in all of the moment and everything else. And especially with state law that backs it up and says this is an affirmative defense. That's the other part of it, is that if there was no affirmative defense, this would be a little more hazy, but there is an affirmative defense that says even if you're breaking the law, if you're running away, you still have the right to protect yourself.
Right. And like, from a very legalistic standpoint, I don't disagree with that. From just a human perspective, specifically the gentleman with the skateboard, like, he had seen what had happened. And I want to say they like knew each other, or at least had been around each other for that day. Mm-hmm. And so in his mind, of course, this is very emotional. There's a lot of adrenaline. You just saw someone get shot and killed by this guy. You were trying to stop him. Like, I know that's what was going through his mind. Yes, in trying to stop him, was he probably trying to harm him? Sure. Like, if someone had just shot someone I knew, I'd be after him too. Mm-hmm. Like, because that's human nature. There's a split, I think, between like the super legalistic side of it, which, as annoying as it is, I agree with self-defense. I hate saying it because I hate that.
Checkbox again, Hodey. Could you please note that? Check that box again, Hodey. Thank you.
Right. But like, I'd still lock Rittenhouse up for being a douchebag if I could make that a law. Like,
yeah, but then I'm not disagreeing with you that before that he did a lot of things, and he wanted to be a cop, and he had said that
he wanted to be a cop for all the wrong reasons,
and that's still legal in this country. Being a douchebag is not illegal, no matter what we want to believe, no matter that. Well, you know, if you are on the side that he's a douchebag and he deserves to get the book thrown at him, you're honestly, in some cases, legally from a legal perspective. No, I don't believe you say that, but I'm saying people that believe that, Lou. If people believe that he's a douchebag and should be put in prison for the rest of his life for what happened, you're not really much better than the people who are saying he's a saint and you should never question Saint Rittenhouse for blowing away the pedophile and the drug guy and all the other stuff. So it's a sucky situation. But
let's let Lou finish her uninterrupted segment, because I need to get to my interrupted segment.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
I'm all chomping at it. So Lou, go ahead and finish your thoughts.
But yeah, so I do think, I almost want to say this has the potential to go one of two ways with Rittenhouse's future. Like, I think he will legally get off. Like, technically, he will get off on the self-defense. I hope, because what you see in him is a young man who had a lot of very right-wing extremist seeds planted in him, with the potential to behave in a way that would put other people in danger. And I think that the hero worship of him now will either push him even further, because now he has like a freaking fan base, right, that are supporting this and making him a hero, or what he's dealing with personally and seeing directly in front of him will make him go, you know what? Maybe I need to reanalyze and how I look at the world. He's young. He has a lot of learning to do. The other thing I did want to address was Rosenbaum, I believe. We know he had been in for a psych eval and stuff like that. He was literally released that morning after being on a 72-hour hold for a suicide attempt. So with him standing there saying, kill me, kill me, kill me, shoot me, shoot me, shoot me, I think, like, I genuinely think that Rosenbaum put himself, it was like a suicide by cop moment for him. I think he was still suffering from his mental illness and unfortunately put himself in a situation where it was easy for him to get himself killed. And that is heartbreaking, and a whole other conversation on mental illness that needs to be had at some point. Rittenhouse should have the book thrown at him over the specifics of being under 18 and this, that, and the other, which I hate to say because then we get into like legal stuff and I'm an anarchist. But I mean, clearly his mama isn't going to discipline him. Like, he needs to learn a lesson. in some way.
He's going to jail. He is going to go to jail.
I think he will.
For the other charges.
I get a time served bullshit.
He's been out on bond, so I mean, he's going to get. I have a feeling what's going to end up happening is that the defense is going to come out. They're going to simply point to the law. They're going to give all the videos of him being chased, and that's going to be. But
oh, the other thing I want to bring up, my last little point. I'm sorry, Hodey. I saw Hodey.
You're good.
Like it's my turn. Sorry.
You're good. I'm excited. You're fine.
So a lot of the on the ground footage that was available, and I tried to watch a lot of it early on when this was first happening, and it was difficult to tell what was happening because of course it's shaky footage, this, that, and the other.
It is. Yeah.
I had my mind pretty made up that pretty much kind of how I feel about it now. I do think the first shot might have been a little more in self-defense, but he kind of wanted it to happen. I do believe now we've all seen this like FBI drone footage, which I totally want to get into later. Oh my God. It makes me so mad. So originally when I first saw it, someone had it mislabeled. And what they showed was Rittenhouse chasing so-and-so. It was mislabeled. And I was like, I knew it. And then when it actually was released later on in a more official whatever, and they broke it down like, okay, fine, like they chased him, whatever, still douchebag. But the FBI, like the whole drone footage thing bothers me.
Creepy as fuck.
And I like how like they're just now telling people about it. Like, oh, okay, interesting.
Mm-hmm. And how much were they sharing with the Kenosha police at the time? Because, you know, they have these fusion centers that were built after 9/11 to purposefully share this data. So, yeah, creepy as bleep. So but fiery but peaceful. Remember that. Fiery but peaceful.
Mostly peaceful. Just shootings all over the place and everything.
Yeah.
All right. So as far as I see this, I could deal with the aftermath, and a lot of that favors the Rittenhouse side, which is, I know in the comments people are talking about like how you would have used a weapon to disable somebody who just hit you in the back of the head with a skateboard, like non-lethally. And some of you were talking about how when somebody shoots behind you, you would have turned around and been able to shoot the gun out of their hand. And like, he actually did that with one, which is somewhat impressive, but like, you know, like that's what you would have done there. I don't buy that. And this is kind of, for me, a textbook example with the F around and find out thing. I'm sorry. If you hit somebody in the back of the head who is fleeing, even if you think it's the right thing to do and they are armed, you might die, right? If you chase somebody and you are part of a group that shoots a gun in the air and the other person tackles him, okay, and he is running away, okay, he's running away at this point. He has not fired a single shot yet at this point, and his shot is fired, and one of your buddies or whatever group you're running with, somebody tackles him. You may get killed, okay? I don't love it. I think like a lot of what people are saying, I understand the proportionate response. I don't want Rittenhouse to kill somebody. Okay, I don't want anybody to die in this situation. It's a stupid car dealership. It's a stupid gas station. It's busted windows and broken glass, and those can be replaced. Human lives cannot. Okay, so I don't love that any of this is happening. However, all of you hotshots who are apparently Clint Eastwood, like over there, and you just blow off people's fingers and suffer no fatalities, good for you, but kind of shut up. Like it's not reasonable. It's not a reasonable thing to say. Now, to say that going into that situation, that's for me where things get really dicey. You've got two different mobs, both exhibiting mob mentality, right? For all there is. I mean, it is so messy and confusing. Like if you listen to these videos, it's funny to read it because they talk about, oh, X amount of shots were fired. And you watch the videos and you're like, I hear like 15 shots going off. And they're like, oh, those are someplace else. And you're just like, oh my gosh, that wasn't even part of that. Like that's a shooting happening across the street. This is a very messy situation. A lot of, I mean, it was shocking. It was shocking to me. Now, Rosenbaum obviously escaping on psych eval. It's been well documented. He was an active, unfortunately, pedophile, and like that's a bad thing, and getting his brain examined, which is a good thing. I want to encourage people to get in their minds right, but his mind was obviously not right, and he was dropping some racist taunts. Who knows where his brain was at? Now, it's weird to be fighting with the Black Lives Matter side and being the one yelling the racist taunts. But like I said, one of the videos, in fact, the first video that was released of the guy with the cell phone pointed at the gas station, he also yells racist taunts at Rittenhouse. And it's a weird thing to be like, that's the N-word, like that N-word right there. That N-word's got a gun. And it's like, I'm sorry, you're the Black Lives Matter side and you're white. Like you can't, like I don't like the word being used by anybody, but if you are sitting there with your phone and you're just being like that N-word, please don't. Okay. Like don't, if you are a white person, use the N-word thing. Okay. Now.
Yeah, no, that. No.
And Jacob brings this up, and I do want to get into this too. Rittenhouse had offered to administer first aid by people who were already being hurt in part of the unrest. Now, we don't have, unfortunately, not as much videos, not as much details about all this, but people are being hurt, right? There's people's bodies are being affected and damaged. Okay,
houses being burned.
Houses being burned. This affects people's livelihood. The owner of the car dealership was Indian American. I mean, it's a dumb thing to do when you are on a side that says this is supposed to be Black Lives Matter, and what's happening? Oh, we're hurting minorities. We're doing damage to minority-owned businesses. We're calling white people the N-word for some reason. Like at some point, you need to step in and be like, I got to get out of here. Like, that's happened to me before. I've been to right wing and left wing rallies back in, because when I'm trying to hang with my friends and learn more about them, and you can see it devolve into something else. Now, I've been lucky to avoid something that is violent, but I remember, I had a friend invite me to her local Black Lives Matter chapter and listen in there, and they just after the 8th time of kind of casually dropping like white devil and white people suck, I was kind of like, you know what, I'm out. I was here, and I was open to it, and I'm still open to the idea. Like that, I understand ideologies can be better than the people. Look at libertarianism, for example. That ideologies can be fantastic, and sometimes the people are a little bit messy. Now, as far as Rittenhouse goes, he had violence in his past. The prosecution is working on seeing if the judge will allow them to bring that up in court.
Probably.
Was he an angry person? Maybe. Certainly seems so, especially if you've already exhibited some violence in your past. Was he probably... Here's the thing about Rittenhouse, though, and I think why a lot of people come to defend him, is that I do see a lot of myself in him if my parents weren't saying, no, Hodey. Because I was right leaning. I was pro police at that age. I was pro Iraq War. I mean, all that stuff when I was his age. And what they said is, "Hey, buddy, back off real quick, okay? Like, you need to kind of stay home." His friend is actually, I guess he was over the age of 18 and was the one that supplied him with the gun. So his friend is obviously in a little bit of trouble there. I never had a friend offered me a gun. I never had a rally in the city where I worked, that was quite this violent. And I managed to avoid a lot of this damage, because I was surrounded by people who were like, no, you're not going to be violent. Now, it wasn't until I probably didn't embrace pacifism until like 2 years ago. So I'm against kind of all violence, mostly even against defensive violence. Maybe that's a subject for another episode. I don't necessarily want that to turn that episode into this, because I do recognize that while I think that's the way forward, I also recognize that people have a right to defend themselves with violence if they are injured. One's a personal choice on my part with pacifism and something that I would encourage other people to do. The other one is, do you have a right to defend yourself or your property if you are assaulted or injured? Was Rittenhouse there looking for something? Okay, so this gets into the whole bait car situation, right? Because when you park a car and you throw the keys in there and you make a big deal of it and you walk away, and somebody steals your car and you go, ha ha, they stole the car. Got him. Let's bust him. We got a whole TV show on that, guys. It's a wild TV show. Like, it's a real situation because you take the car, you park it, you give people the temptation, and there you go. You know, was Rittenhouse egging them on? I don't love the fact that he got, now I don't know what happened. This is something that's still going to have to happen in court. I don't love the fact that he got separated from kind of the safety. And I also don't love the fact that he's kind of putting himself in the shoes of defense that was not asked for. The business owners have taken the stand. It was like, hey, I did not ask for that, you know, like, and all that. Now, that being said, even if it's a bait car situation, you don't get to steal a car. You don't get to harm a person. This is still on them. Now, I dislike the tactic. I think most libertarians do dislike the tactic of the bait car, right? Like, because it is tempting somebody to do something bad when they are in dire circumstances. You go into these situations where people are in dire circumstances, and you prey on that and what is going on in their minds, right? It's like it's like you need this test real bad, and the teacher just leaves the answer key on the desk in front of you, and it's your job to not look up. It is there's a reason these bait car things happen. They drive up your numbers, and Rittenhouse is probably something of a bait car type of situation. Let's have something happen tonight. Based on what I understand from his prior statements, he was ready and expecting something violent to happen. That, again, this is still 100% on the aggressor. But, and I think what really kind of clinches this one for me is let's say Rittenhouse was black. Would you still feel the same way about Rittenhouse as you do right now to anybody like listening? Does that affect it? Because it shouldn't, right? It shouldn't matter. I mean, they're calling him the N-word to begin with. So, you know, like, if he was a black person, would you feel differently about what happened to Rittenhouse? And if all of a sudden you say, well, yeah, all of a sudden I see a bunch of white people kind of surrounding a person and kind of
saying the N-word,
right? Then all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, now all of a sudden things get a little bit worse. And it's kind of, and look, I'm biased this way too. And I want to be very clear about that, in that I'm very sensitive to, I think because I had to learn so much recently, to the plights of people who are less fortunate than me. So I tend to see white people and I'm like, oh, they're probably fine. I see a mob against the black person and I'm like, no, bad. You know what I mean? like that's really not right, you know? And I think that would shape it, but it shouldn't shape it. So for me, I probably do lean towards like the Rittenhouse. I don't want to say did nothing wrong, because there's the legal perspective and there's the philosophical perspective where you're probably okay with it. But then there's the other perspective. And here's what my closing thing about Rittenhouse is. There's a reason that we as libertarians might want to abolish every single law, right? Why are we still not down with pedophilia? Well, because they're kids and they're developing, and having sex with a developing kid is a screwed up thing to do. Okay. How about introducing violence to a developing kid? How about filling their minds with ideas of war heroism or police? I mean, this kid was indoctrinated with the Blue Lives Matter stuff already at 17 years old. He was given a gun at 17 years old. Now, I'm not saying 17-year-olds have the right to self-defense and bodily autonomy as much as anybody else, okay? But when you give somebody a weapon, you put them in these situations and you encourage them and you hold them up as heroes. I have a tough time seeing that as much fundamentally different as saying the 17-year-old girl that this 38-year-old guy slept with knew exactly what she was doing. She was totally fine. It was cool. That's not cool. It's not fine. There's a reason we're not cool with that. People are all developing, right? Like, and that's not cool to do that. So that's kind of how I see it. I appreciate you all letting me get my long thoughts out on that one, but it's a gray area. There's a lot of issues here. We got a lot to talk about, especially in the chat. I see y'all are fighting. I probably won't address like fighting stuff, but if y'all have any questions or comments and stuff, like
be nice in the chat.
It's a tough issue. Like it's tough. we are wading through the mud, and some people are finding rocks and some people are finding emeralds, and everybody's like, look at the rocks, and some people are like, look at the emeralds. You got to look at it all together, man. This is a messed up situation.
They're trying to get each other to look at the rocks and emeralds at about 80 miles an hour towards each other's heads.
Yeah, so. Right. Hucking them at each other.
Oh my God. I am so, like, it is very frustrating for me because I spent a lot of early adulthood studying law and the Constitution, and like I went to school for public policy, and I sat and read all my divorce attorneys like constitutional law books, and like I got a lot of free tutoring out of it. It was great. So I just, so I understand the legality of all of this, but I almost feel like he's kind of getting away with murder, and it's scary. And here's why. Was the specific moment where he shot someone self-defense? Sure was. He went there wanting to do it. And then you try to prosecute that, and we're talking about thought crimes, right?
Yeah.
Like,
right.
And that gets really scary.
Maybe she went to the party dressed that way. Maybe she
exactly
wanted.
This is what bothers me is, like, I have such a hard time wrapping my mind around this whole thing, right? Because it's like, you can't say to a woman who, I'll be out, if I put on a short skirt and a low cut shirt and I go out, I'm doing it because, I want some attention, right? And it makes me feel good, and I want other people to know I'm feeling good. I'm not asking for rape, right? Does that same principle apply with a situation like Kyle Rittenhouse, where he literally is going looking for a fight, and is somehow lucky enough to position himself in the defense?
I would, as I said, there's definitely plenty of laws, and actually one thing we haven't talked about is the way they've charged him.
Interesting.
The way they've charged him and things like that. There are plenty of other things they could have charged him with, but the prosecutor decided to go full bore on first degree. It was intentional homicide, I believe. Hang on here.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that was to appease people, because isn't that an elected position?
Oh yeah. Oh, definitely an elected position. But yeah, to say first degree intentional homicide, and this is the one thing that drives me up the wall about prosecutors and our court system, is in some states that it is, you have to charge them with one, basically one crime out of, like, you can't charge someone with first degree, second degree, third degree murder, and then go down the manslaughter line and say, pick one. It's a buffet. Because you think about it,
almost makes more sense.
Yeah, it makes more sense. But the thing is this, if you're saying, well, we could have gave him the chair, but we'll just give him 30 years in jail instead. It's kind of like, determine the circumstances of the crime, find out what statute matches up with those circumstances, charge him with that crime. This whole, well, we're going to charge you with all these things and let a jury kind of sort it out, jury of your peers, is just bothersome, and it's prosecutorial overreach. And yes, it's an elected position, and it makes me sick, but I'm also glad it's an elected position, because hopefully people in Kenosha are going to look at this afterwards and go, we spent all this money on this case that, a jury can go either way. A jury can totally ignore the law and just say, they can go jury nullification the wrong way. And Preston's got it's separating legality from morality. And the problem is, we don't like legalizing morality. We don't like legalizing that you should have been a good boy at home with your mommy reading your Bible verses. That, we don't want that law. We don't want the law. And there are a lot of people that might like that. The person just commented, but the thing is this, is that we can't legalize morality, and we should, because morality of society changes. It's changed so much in my lifetime, for minorities, for gay people, for women, a whole bunch of change. And if we legalize it, bad things happen. So is Kyle Rittenhouse kind of a douchebag? Yeah. But I know a lot of 17-year-olds are kind of douchebags, and eventually they grow up and a lot of them turn into decent people. So
he's gonna have that chance now.
No, that chance is unfortunately gone. He's gonna get reinforced that he was a hero that night and he took out that pedophile and the drug user and blah blah blah.
As though the pedophilia had anything to do with it.
Yeah,
I mean, really. I don't even think the
That, to
racist
me,
yelling
is
had
like
anything to
George
do with
Floyd
it. Like
thing.
it just
it doesn't matter to me.
Yeah, it's
I
a
don't
non-issue.
think George Floyd was on drugs and had done other stuff in the past.
Correct, right?
In that moment, what was he doing?
It's the same thing when they bring in like his previous spot. Well, he was an angry person. What was he angry at the moment? Was he, was he angry or was he scared shitless like the normal 17-year-old would be being chased by a mob? Trust me, as someone who was chased by a mob when I was close to that age, trust me, I wasn't thinking of, well, I am in the right. I'm going to stand right here and stand my ground. I was going, get me the fuck out of here.
Right?
Yeah, and probably a good response. Like run when there's violence. I mean, that's a good thing. Hold on to that.
I'm going somewhere.
Because you challenge, like there's this challenge in these circles that kind of Rittenhouse was in, that like you got to express your manliness by standing up and fighting. And I find that such a toxic behavior because there is so much to do to counter something besides fighting. In fact, usually fighting doesn't solve it at all or makes it worse.
Yeah.
Right. And so when you look at these situations, like we talk about, and I'm glad Preston said that this is a matter separating legality versus morality, because it sounds like all three of us probably agree on the legality.
Yep.
Wisconsin law is I find that every time there's a law like this, of course, these are different by state. It's funny, we talk about first, second, and third in such like law and order generalities, but every state defines it a little bit differently.
Right.
They do have a shot to get him under first degree just because in Wisconsin, it's not like a premeditated kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's that you acted like you intended to kill somebody. So, I mean, and it does not actually say, now Wisconsin, as you also mentioned, Brad, is a separate statute that says, except for in the case of self-defense.
Oh, it's in the same statute. It's actually the self-defense statute calls it out.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, I guess, yeah.
Yeah, so like I was just looking up like for Wisconsin first degree, what is it? And it's very simple. It's just, did you aim to kill this person? And it's like, well, yeah, probably. And so you have to go seek out the other statutes. So like there is this, I think we're probably all there legally. There may be some issues with like the way the state law is worded or something like that. But as far as like, do we want this kid spending a lot of time in prison? Kind of doesn't really help a whole lot. It's not, and do we want him getting off without anything happening to him? Well, that doesn't help a whole lot either, right? Like maybe there's a psyche eval that needs to happen with him as well, right? Like maybe to talk with these people and just say like, hey, listen, let's bring it down to earth a little bit. Instead of you've got two sides that are throwing gasoline all over the situation by saying that this man's a hero or this man needs to be crucified. And it is it's one of those that's kind of, I'm sorry if you feel strongly one way or the other, you should probably check yourself right now for far right, far left, like mentality.
Yeah.
It's you're becoming detached from the situation at hand. The stronger you feel about it, it's just too much gray.
Mm-hmm. Hey,
I do think so much goes in, and I'll turn it over to you, Brian. But I think the thing that I just wanted to leave off with this one is that prevention is kind of all of this here. And Jacob said it, and I posted it for just a brief minute there. But like, there's no fixing this situation once you're in it. Once we're shooting people in the back, and once we're breaking car dealerships and burning them and hurting people and setting dumpsters on fire and putting them down the street, we tend to, as a society, be very reactionary in that regard. Say, what do we do now? Well, now is too late. Now we just kind of say, I hope everybody goes to sleep quickly. I hope they get tired out, because it's out of control now. At this point, and we tend to design a whole system of laws based on when it gets to this point. But the real way we combat this type of situation and avoiding this loss of life, property, bodily autonomy, tribalism, the way we avoid all of this is to kind of boil it down and get to that prevention part and say like, okay, how do I take care of this? I have mentioned this already. I was a lot like Kyle Rittenhouse at his age. Would you have handed me the gun? Would you have driven me to the car dealership? Would you have been like, hey, Hodey, time out real quick. Maybe there's another better way to go about things. Let me teach you about this thing called pacifism. Let me have you read a little Tolstoy. Let me have you think real quick about the success of nonviolence and movements. Let me teach you about the success of loving your enemies and relating to them and understanding where they come from and using that to make your point. I'm not asking you to abandon your values. Your values be what they are. But maybe there's a better way to go about making those things happen. I've said it before on the show, Martin Luther King Jr. was brilliant about this, and I think it's something that we need to communicate to people over and over and over. Libertarians are really gifted on philosophy, and we love to talk more and more and more and more and more about philosophy. And that's great. I mean, I love philosophy, right? It's fantastic. But 9/10 of what Martin Luther King Jr. spent doing was talking about how to protest and not just what to protest. People generally know what to be upset about. I don't know a single person on this earth outside of libertarian circles that looks at the drone bombing in Afghanistan that killed that worker and his family and says, yeah, that was cool. Like, I'm down with that. We know to be mad about it. We know that sucks. Everybody knows that sucks. What we don't know is what to do. Rittenhouse, as well as the Black Lives Matter, obviously you can say whatever you want, whether they were the Black Lives Matter protesters or fake Black Lives Matter. But if you are destroying property or chasing people around, somebody needs to tell you to stop. Somebody should have told Kyle Rittenhouse to stop and fight a more successful war on a different front. He's on a front that is not helpful. The Kyle Rittenhouse situation, has it helped? Are we better about self-defense in this country? Are we better about Black Lives Matter issues? Are we better about the Second Amendment now? None of this helped, right? So he did something that didn't help, and there was nobody there to stop him. There's only people there to egg him on. And just like, and I hate the focus that is all on him, because earlier in the day, people are getting injured countering these protests. If you are a part of a protest that is getting people hurt, you need to leave, and you need to tell the people to leave as well that you care about. You need to be out of there. You cannot be part of it. Do not attach your name to it. I say this, like, libertarians sometimes will like attach their name to somebody who drops occasional racisms or ableist slurs or something. Get out, right? Like, don't detach your train at that point and be like, I'm going to go let you run free, and I'm going to attach my libertarianism to somebody that doesn't do this kind of stuff, right? Like, this just... And I'm not saying that you need to disavow them. I'm saying you remove yourself from the situation. You encourage those that you love to remove yourself from the situation. And I feel like for me, that is the biggest takeaway of all this. I'm going to go ahead and let's Brian, why don't you have some final thoughts on this? Lou, I'll give you some final thoughts, and then we'll get into some piece of my mind action.
This gets to a theory that I have, and I'm sure other people have said it before, so this is not probably unique, but I always say big protests have a 10-80-10 rule, and it may be 5-95. 10% of the people there are there to protest. They're legitimately bought into the issue at hand. They want change. They want to get out there and say the message. 80% are there because it's fun. I'm going to go outside and go wandering around and that's what you see in a lot of these protests. You'll see a lot of people. It's kind of walking along aimlessly. It's kind of like the red ribbon from Seinfeld. People more interested in wearing the damn ribbon than fixing AIDS and stuff like that. And then there's the 10%. The 10% that, unfortunately, a lot of these people were the fuck around and find out types that want to cause chaos, that want to cause all sorts of problems. The 10% want the 80% there because it makes their numbers look huge. The other 10% wants the 80% there because they aren't paying attention and they can go and hide in that group. So unfortunately, until we start realizing that that's going on and that 10% tells that 80%, hey, get your cameras out. And if you see somebody breaking something, video it, put it here so we can have those idiots arrested. It's not going to change. And lastly, Hodey, I'm calling you a liar because there is no such thing as a little Tolstoy. Okay, let's be honest. There is no such thing as a little Tolstoy. Okay,
It's
So
true.
I'm sorry, I had to call you on that one.
War and Peace is I can't even imagine. I can't even imagine any book that puts Moby Dick to shame. I'm out. I read Atlas Shrugged. I paid my dues.
Yeah.
No, The
Why
Kingdom
would
of
you
God
do
is
that
Within
to
You is a really short one. I know I've said it before. Highly recommended. Read it. All right, Lou, your final thoughts on this before we get to the next segment.
So instead of like summarizing and wrapping it all up, I'm gonna do what I do best, and I'm gonna make a prediction about Kyle Rittenhouse's future.
Okay.
I see him getting a bit of a slap on the wrist for the curfew and the this and that, right? The right will continue to make him a hero. And especially because he's going to get off on first-degree homicide. I see him sort of following George Zimmerman's footsteps.
Yeah.
In that
absolutely.
he's going to feel untouchable.
Yep.
And he's going to continue on that path where he already has people worshiping him, because it's human nature. He's not going to listen to the few that are like, hey, man, you're young enough. You can turn this around now. You don't have to be an extremist. You can broaden your horizons and learn a little. No, he's not going to go that way, right? That's just not human nature. He's got the right-wing extremists and the misogynists and like that whole side of things worshiping the ground he walks on. I give it 5 years. He ends up back in court for something similar to George Zimmerman. That's exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah, I can see that. Or
you heard it here first, folks. The Lou, you both have been pretty accurate with your predictions. This is kind of a longer term one,
right?
Most of your predictions on this show have come true within like the next episode we're talking about. Unless something crazy happens in prison or something weird happens in prison,
right?
I don't. We may have to wait, but you know what? I'll wait 5 years. I think we'll still be around.
I think it could be sooner. It could be sooner.
Okay.
I think with the accelerated nature of social media and everything like that, I hate to say this, but he is going to have a target on his back.
Oh yeah.
And I'm not saying someone's going to take him out. I'm not saying someone's going to do that.
Sure.
But someone is going to provoke him, and he is, just as Lou said, is going to feel emboldened when he is found not guilty of those other crimes. Which, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it's guaranteed. I'm saying that this is the way the statute reads. Mm-hmm. This is the way, yes, prosecutors can always see it differently, but juries can also see it differently as well. But more than likely, he's going to be found innocent of that, and he's going to feel emboldened, and somebody's going to pick on him, and he's going to do something just as stupid as Zimmerman did. So, better run, as I said, for office. He'll probably be a state senator in about 5-10 years. Yeah. It's Wisconsin. They deserve it. No, I'm kidding.
Bottom line is, folks, and I've only shared a handful of the comments because some of them are just so divisive. And like, here's the deal. Like, I mean what I say. If you feel you're strongly compelled one way or the other, and if you find yourself saying like, oh yeah, the left or the right is so toxic on this issue, just take a deep breath, do a little introspection. There was a lot of toxicity to go around for everybody on this one. Believe me, I do recommend Rittenhouse get his mind checked, and it's nothing that I wouldn't recommended for the people who assaulted him, for the people who chased him, for the people who he aided with first aid when they were attacked. Any of these aggressors there, like get checked. No aggression is okay. And I understand some people want to focus on this aggression or that aggression or this or that. No, like it is not. As soon as you start getting on the train of justifying violence, there is a tunnel that goes very deep in that front, my friend, and it usually doesn't end where you think it's going to end. We like to think just a little violence here and there will do it, and that's generally not the nature of violence. So, just understand that the issue is complex for what it is. I'm glad at least on the show we had a civil comments. I feel like it's like we're talking civilly while there's like the Coliseum fight going on underneath us and the gladiators down there. But
read through them and
no, it's Yeah, Ashley Shades is right. It's nap time. Okay. All right. All right. We're going to take a brief break and get back to you with a piece of our mind right after this. All right, everybody. Thanks so much for hanging tight there and bearing with us. I'm gonna talk us about sports again this week. Man, I really wanted to talk about the Braves because that is an awesome underdog victory for them. They were playing with like as busted a team as I've ever seen. Losing record going all the way into August. Barely made it in with 88 wins. Pulling out the victory, and I gotta tell you, they did it. They did everything they could have done to win, and it went right. And it was a bunch of no names, and I love it. They're going to lose a lot of players after this season, and so it's kind of a now or never opportunity. You very rarely see teams as underdogish as the Braves, taking, especially when you're going against a team like the Astros. And I really wanted to talk about that, but there's not really any good angle to talk about. And we had what I would call one of the darkest days in NFL history this week. Because like on the same day, everybody's talking about how Aaron Rodgers kind of dropped a little fibberino with his COVID vaccination status. I found that the more important story was happening in Las Vegas, where Henry Ruggs' first round pick from, all right, Lou, there's two of you now.
Oh, I muted it. Hang on. There we go.
All right.
I had muted it, but it unmuted it. So I don't know. Anyway,
no worries. I like the echo. More Lou, the better. We're good now. This is a guy who had it all in front of him. Was a good part of the community. Was somebody who was really making some strides this year. I remember just the week prior on fantasy football, they were talking about how he's a pickup because he's on the rise. And he got intoxicated. He drove 158 or 156, something like that, miles an hour. He hit a car. That car had a woman and her dog in front of it. And he, unfortunately, they survived the impact only to be killed by the engulfing flames after he hit them. You can have everything going right in your life and still be off. And I think that's an important lesson that I kind of just want to share with any of our audience listeners right now. And I don't know that I can make this political at all. I think I'm just going to settle for making this personal. We are surprised every year when somebody who seems like they have it all commits suicide seemingly out of the blue or makes a terrible decision. And we just say, well, where did that come from? They had everything lined up just fine. And if we constantly go about discouraging people from sharing their feelings or from talking about difficult decisions or admitting the small mistakes they make, then we basically just postpone it until the big mistake comes along. And if we constantly encourage men to be men and never share their feelings and pretend that everything's okay and it's all right, like you got all these women, what can you complain about? You got all this money, what can you complain about? You get all this talent, what are you going to complain about? You little whiner? Are you a baby? What's going on? This is, it's such a sad situation. I think it's murder. Sure. I mean, whenever you're driving that negligently and you hit somebody, you're asking for somebody to die, either you or somebody else. And in this case, it was somebody else. And you might not know why. You might not know why you're in that place or what's going on, but something's there and something's happening in your mind. I'm loving this trend of athletes coming forward. We had an amazing story. I mean, there are athletes coming forward talking about sexual harassment that they've had to endure in hockey for these past couple weeks. And some just talking about how like it was undiagnosed OCD or ADHD. And what happens when a lot of people hear OCD or ADHD? Oh, get over it. Oh, just pay attention better. Oh, stop. You're just letting your diagnosis excuse you from not wanting to pay attention. And is there some element of, do we overdiagnose stuff in this country? Well, of course we do. Do people self-diagnose a little bit too much? Yes, of course. But when you have a legitimate problem and people dismiss it as just rub some dirt in it and grow up and get better, you get stories like Henry Ruggs. Now, there's no evidence that Ruggs was struggling with anything prior to this, right? Because the only people who would know would be people who encouraged him to share the bad stuff. For people who say, I want to know what's wrong. Everything seems to be going great. Please tell me what's wrong anyway. Tell me the worst thing that's going on right now. And if it's just the bus was late today and it made you feel this or that way, great. That's fantastic. You know, like people don't want to be weak. And I get that. I'm right there with them. I don't like to lead every day with me whining, right? And talking about everything going bad in my life, right? But sometimes just it'll be a small thing, but it gets to you differently than the others. You know, my block list is, I don't know how big at this point, but, you know, I'll block somebody who's being a jerk. No, I have no issue with it. I've already done it in the chat, for goodness sake. But, you know, if somebody's just wildly nuts and mean and cruel, and I'll block them. And normally it doesn't get to me. But sometimes even somebody you block that you know is just talking out of their butt says something, then it gets to you. And you know it shouldn't. But I'm glad I have people around me that I could be like, you know what? I don't know why, and I know it's not true, but this person made fun of me for having a 5 head, right? Like, and I understand, man, I got some baldness going on, and most of the time I'm secure about it, and I don't feel that bad about it. But then some days I get remembered. Like, I remember the times when I got bullied in middle school for some reason. Like, I've dealt with it. I've done all the psychological steps that I need to do to be secure about it. But sometimes I just need that person to say, you know what? I don't know why it hurt my feelings, but it just reminded me of these times when I got beat up or stuffed in my locker because I was balding there in 6th grade. And who balds in 6th grade? It's ridiculous, you know? And it hurt my feelings and it was hard to get over and stuff like that, right? Like, so, but basically what I'm saying is it's okay that life is good and it's okay that you don't want to be a whiner. I don't like whiners. And I'll be the first to tell you I don't like whiners. People who their life is red flags, I'm just like, man, I've given you so much advice and information and love and care that I can at this point that you were the red flag. You're the flag. You're the one, you know, like this is the reason your life is red flags is because you are the flag, right? And this is why everything hurts. And I'm not trying to be dismissive and I'm not trying to say like you are obligated to not be a whiner. But I think people are so fearful of that they don't want to admit when something is wrong. And like I said, it ends up like the Henry Ruggs situation. Heart goes out to everybody in there. It's awful. I mean, he's out of the NFL. He's going to spend maybe 20 years, maybe 60 years in prison, maybe 2 years. I don't know. But he's got blood on his hands now. And why? Because of something. And I don't know what that something is, but he wasn't right. Because if you're right, you don't get whatever double the legal limit. And I mean, that was even hours after the courts forced him to give it to him, right? So who knows what he was at the time of the accident, right? But over double the legal limit. You don't go driving 158 miles an hour. You don't go put your girlfriend in your car with you. You don't make those kind of decisions. You know, so whether it's recognizing those choices that you're making or just admitting when you're hurt or feeling bad, I just would encourage you to share with somebody, you know, have somebody there and talk to them about it and just say like, hey, you know what? Life is going great. And here's the great stuff, but I also got this happening right now and it's really affecting me. And that kind of honesty, I think will save you a lot of pain. Anything you two have to say about either Ruggs or just mental wellness in general?
Louis, go ahead. I mean, I've got a couple thoughts, but
I think mental health is something that we are talking about more, but I don't feel like we're acting on it more yet as a society in general. And I think that, you know, in all of our attempts to be politically correct and inclusive, like there's a lot of talk about it's okay to talk to someone or, you know, own your mental health or this, that, the other, you know, and that's all well and good. But I feel like we're not seeing the action behind it that will make those who need the help feel comfortable enough to get it. And at this point, it is our responsibility with the next generation, right? You know, we my husband and I are like, if you guys all know my husband, and he's this big, scary, burly, tattooed guy
Love him.
who will cry at a Kleenex commercial and talk about his feelings all day long. Like, and I love that. So we have worked really, really hard with our kids to like have mental health check-ins and like make sure, you know, if it's a bad grade, it's not you're grounded until it's like, okay, what's going on? You may also be grounded until the grades come up, but why? Why are you struggling? Is it the subject? Is there something else? Are you being bullied? Are you just having a hard time? Like,
That's good.
What can we do? We are on your team, right? Yeah. And I think, you know, we're raising two boys and a very emotional girl who has no problems expressing her emotions. But raising two boys is very, you know, in this world today is hard, you know, and we have worked really, really hard. You know, we have those talks with our kids, you know, we want you happy and healthy. And how can we make that happen? You know, you don't have to go to college to have a career you be happy, you know, that sort of stuff. And we like to check in with our kids. And I think that's really where the action comes in, you know, on an individual level with those around you, your family, where you have a connection. We can start taking those actions to check in, so that people know that, yeah, like we say, hey, get help, but like we're open and a safe place for you to talk. And I think that's, you know, that's a key element that we really need to work on, is the action behind the words.
Yeah.
I you know, there's really nothing that I don't think anyone doesn't agree with on this. I mean, number one, he was impaired, driving 156 miles an hour, crashed into a vehicle and killed someone. That's pretty straightforward. And we can get back to, well, you know, he had a bad, you know, some mental issues and stuff like that. But in the end, you know, unfortunately in this situation, that he's the aggressor in this case. This wasn't a running away from somebody or anything like that. So it's you know, I wish that whatever demons are in everyone's head, we could just take care of right away. But sometimes those demons are what bring out the best in us. And it sucks. But again, the situation is, if someone takes his keys, if he takes an Uber home, he would have started probably this weekend, and they probably would have beat the Giants.
Yeah.
So that being said, there's a lot of things we can look back at and say would have, could have, should have. But unfortunately, hindsight's 2020. I would hope that this is a wake-up call. The NFL is getting better. If they can stop being so more worried about vaccines, or, you know, if someone's offended because somebody took a knee or didn't take a knee or whatever.
Oh, gosh. Yeah.
And just get to understand some of these people are pretty broken and probably need some help. The Olympics has helped, I believe, with Simone taking her time away from the Olympics and things like that, have opened the doors that these are humans and they're not super people who have everything together. So, you know, maybe we'll grow out of this. Maybe, you know, a lot of people will say it's just a bunch of wusses, overpaid wusses, shut up and go catch the ball and make me money on various sports betting sites that are,
yeah.
At the point, I kind of want to move from Indiana because I don't want to see any more commercials about the various betting things. So, but there's just nothing else you can say about it. It's unfortunate.
Come to Utah, you'll never see a betting thing again. Yeah, I Brian, I like what you said about how like some of the demons kind of make us stronger. I find that the advice that I got from the struggles that I've had in my life, when I've had to, you know, go against certain things, when I take advice from somebody who has not struggled with that thing ever, I try to take it, but it's off. It doesn't work right. Like, my mom, my dad, my family, they can love you all they want, but if they haven't been through it, they don't understand, right? So they just kind of say like, and it's not that they intentionally, especially my family, it's not like they ever would say anything like rub some dirt in it, but you don't know what to say to somebody.
Right.
You know, C.S. Lewis talked about, I don't talk about gambling much because I didn't struggle with gambling. I did struggle with lust. And so I can offer you advice about lust and how to combat that. But as far as gambling, I didn't struggle with it. So I'm not going to go around here and give you advice about it because I don't know how to deal with it. You know, if you haven't struggled with like OCD, you can't explain it to somebody who struggles with OCD, right? Like trying to give them advice is like you're in a box that you just can't get into. And it takes really understanding like somebody who's gone through that to kind of give that advice and help you out. And again, that just involves being honest with it and seeking out that help to be like, hey, here's what I'm going through. Somebody else has gone through this before. Okay, great. You know, and that's important. I haven't struggled with, I've lived a very privileged life as far as things go. I will admit it. I'm not embarrassed of it. My parents worked hard to give me that privileged life. So thanks, Mom and Dad. I appreciate it. But, you know, that's not to say I haven't had any problems, and I've definitely had some problems. And I'm happy for the things that I have and grateful for them. But even I, with my ludicrous amount of privilege, have had things that I've had to work on. And if you feel like you're coasting through life, something's going to come up or something is up that you don't know about yet. And more talking can always make it better. Anyhow, I've gone on long enough about this. Let's talk about something else. Let's start with eeny, meeny, miny, Brian. Brian, why don't you give us a piece of your mind?
I'm going full again on COVID and the stupidity of the government, but not just the stupidity of the government, but stupidity of the rest of us. So Biden's vaccine mandates being held up. As we know, that the purpose behind the vaccine mandate seems poorly thought out, doesn't take into account any problems that people have with vaccines or have had COVID or any sort of science other than check this box and make us feel better that we can all get back to our lives. And let me caveat, by the way, that I do have did receive both my shots, including the rabies shot. So hopefully I'm going to be okay.
You still need it though.
Yeah. Just
get those fleas going.
But the one thing I want to call out, not just that Biden's initial attempt at this has been held up by an appeals court, not the AP reporter who then went and quoted somebody from Georgetown Law who brought up the incredible point that there was no legal basis for an appeals court who has no scientific background to go ahead and hold up something that's being proclaimed by scientists. You go to you work at Georgetown Law. So the first question is not only what are you doing there, but can they ask for a refund? But finally, the big part that I want to get to on this, not only just because of the vaccine mandates, not only just because, while I do agree people should get vaccinated, I believe that it's also a personal choice. The final thing that nailed this in the coffin today for me was this lovely little article by USA Today. And Brian, what did USA Today say today? Well, it said that they did a survey of employees, and they said that over half would narc on fellow employees who are not following the vaccine mandates. Over half. Think about that. Half of your coworkers are willing to throw you under the bus. Now, that's not half of everywhere. And of course, they could have very well have gone to a government agency where everybody is like, oh yeah, I'd tell on anybody. They didn't get into great details, but it was run by a firm that surveyed 1,300 employees and seeing how this would shape workplace culture. And more than half, 55%, would report their fellow coworkers who had not been vaccinated or maybe lied about it. So that's something to really think about, especially when looking at the Great Resignation that's going on at this time and how people are really fucking up this economy just so they can be on the right side of what they think humanity should be going to. most of the normal people I talk to, thankfully, most of the normal people are starting to slowly fall into the knowing all the problems, knowing all the people have had COVID, knowing all the issues like that. Maybe this whole vaccine mandate is probably a little premature, but I think that the people just need to be careful and keep that in mind that half of your coworkers are probably going to narc you out. So it's disturbing, says a lot of us as a culture. But the scary thing is this: probably we've got one of the highest numbers one of the lowest numbers, let me rephrase that, of people that narc out, because we look up countries like the EU and stuff like that, and I bet you that number is a lot higher. So it's scary. Yeah. Ridiculous.
I love my coworkers too much. I love you guys too much. I mean, I just don't.
I do too.
I think I value my people over my, I don't know. I can understand there being a philosophical thing with it to say that if this person's endangering the workplace, it's not a matter of if I like them or not. It's that I will turn them in because they're endangering the workplace. And, with the way the rhetoric goes with COVID, I think that you can especially USA Today. Oh my goodness. These are the people that did the gun attachment, right? That meme. For those who haven't seen that, look up USA Today, like gun attachment on Google or something. It's, if you need a laugh, they made a historically like hilarious, like what a gun attachment could be. And people just meme the heck out of it. Like
I like to make put Godzilla under an AR-15. I thought that was the best attachment ever.
I'm gonna make with an apple and I'm gonna send it to you.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. That's a good one for Brian in this show. And so I do get like some of it, but I think the fact that it is over 55% just shows how strong that is. And like you said, I'm sure it's even stronger over at other places. I mean, this is there's definitely an argument when you go, especially to Europe, when you talk about COVID protocols. I've talked about in the world how some places are further along in libertarianism, and some places that are not as far. And Europe is generally not as far. They would consider us all, down to a man, they would pretty much consider us all right wingers, even though that has nothing to do with libertarianism. And I mean, I think most of the libertarians I know would despise the right wing as much as they do the left wing, but they don't. That's not where their head's at, So I mean, it's a tough place to be over there. I guess as far as COVID protocols go, I mean, I hope that more journalism, especially with stuff like USA Today, can become remote, so we don't have to deal with any of this. I love having a remote thing because that way I don't have to worry about lying to somebody or filling about something out, or hey, here's my card, or where's your card, or all these card games, because it's a pain and it sows a lot of distrust, as you mentioned, Brian. And I'm sure that's part of it. Is it's just COVID has been a big us versus them, and it's helped to be a libertarian to avoid. Some libertarians dove right in and wanted to be part of the us versus them. No, thank you to that for me. I like to be kind of above that argument or beneath that argument, depending on how you like to talk about it, but just say, this is a medical decision. It deserves to be spoken about in a medical way and not in a political way. And I find that the more we do that, the making it political, I mean, I almost feel like myself getting further away from reality when I talk about it politically. Like it just feels ungrounded, and you can tell. That's all I got to say. Lou, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I have a very simple response to just that last bit. It's snitches get bitches, y'all. That's all I got.
I know, and it's like it's going.
I'm not. Yeah. Just so you know. No, but that Cody and I agree on like 99% of things, but I am not a pacifist, which is why we're friends, because I got your back, Hodey. When you need to be a pacifist, I got you.
When I need a violent backup, I'll just be like, Lou, help me.
I got you.
Thank you. Cool. Well, Lou, why don't you give us a piece of your mind, and then we'll say our goodbyes.
Okay, so my birthday is in a couple of days, And yay. On Facebook, they always give you the option to like pick a donation thing. And I'm totally going to use my piece of my mind to promote that. But mainly because I really, really, really wanted to make this about Ashley Shade, who is amazing. And she won her election. And I'm so excited. Just breaking records left and right. She's the first transgender person in her county, or like, it's more than just like where she was elected, but like a bigger area than that. She's the first one elected to a role on city council. So, and I'm just so excited, and I'm a little bummed because I've actively worked on campaigns for several years, and it's as libertarians, we don't we do it because we believe in it, not because there's money in it, because trust me, there's not. And this year I have taken a step back and I've kind of retired from all of that, but I did help her kick off the campaign, and I sent out her first press release to announce her run. And I want to say it was like within that first hour of the first press release going out, she had calls for interviews. So I was like, yay, okay, you're on a roll. And I kind of passed the torch and I stepped aside, and I was cheering from the sidelines, and I donated when I could. And then election night, we're all sitting there watching the numbers come in, and my God, she did it. And it's all her. I mean, if you know Ashley, you can't not love her. And she could have had a team of squirrels on crack that didn't know what they were doing, and she still could have won completely on her own. That's not to say that her team isn't absolutely amazing. Everybody on her team is just brilliant and hardworking, and we all had a victory for a libertarian. It's very exciting. And yeah. Oh, and she asked me to write the final press release from the campaign, which was a really cool full circle moment for me in my political campaign work career. Nice little feather in the cap. I was very excited. Thank you, Ashley. So in her honor and in celebration of this huge win, I am asking people to donate to TREES, which is Transgender Resource Education and Enrichment Services. Say that 5 times fast. They actively do like transgender education for small town and rural America, which I think is super duper important, because that culturally, I think, is where we need to touch more hearts and minds. Because I have lived in rural small town America, and I know there are people with good hearts who mean well, but they don't know better. And so I think TREES is such an amazing organization, and beyond just my birthday, like, go look them up. It's webetrees.org. They are amazing, amazing, amazing. They have some really cool swag. They have a ton of events. You can support them in all kinds of ways, but you can especially this week support them through my Facebook page. I'm sharing the link every day. I am absolutely obsessed with this organization, and they're doing so much good. And I would like to see more.
We do not ask for donations on the show, people. I'm just letting you know. So maybe if you want to pay a little bit back, TREES, check out Lou's Facebook page, throw in a little bit of a donation in honor of her birthday. Okay,
it's for I don't ask for, and it's not for any libertarian stuff. It's for Ashley and for all the people that we love. What better gift can you give society than education around love, which is what Ashley's campaign was all about. Compassion, education, and love. And that's how she won her election. Okay.
I do love that she did it. Yeah, you're good. I love that she did it the love way. Because I think a lot of people are trying the Trump way. And I would very much like to get away from that. I think unless you're going against Hillary Clinton, I don't know that the Trump way is a winner. And so I of course, Ashley Shade lover, friend of mine, someone who I speak with at least weekly, as well. Big kudos to her. There's a lot to get over, when you are a transgender person. I remember just the week leading up to it, there was somebody murdered for being transgender, that hit national news. And it's been, violence has been escalating against them. We are generally getting better about bigotry, but we accept that when you're getting better, you take steps back. Anybody who's tried to get clean before will tell you you're never truly clean. They had somebody on, intervention. One of the guys, like, sit down, we want to tell you how much we love you. Take a break because he fell back into it. But he was one of the moderators. How could this happen? No, it just happens. America we got a little bit sick again with the transphobe thing. And hopefully we continue to get better, but we don't get better just by hope. We get better by work and by education and programs like Trees helping to make people understand. I'm a big fan of Outright Libertarians USA, helping libertarians and bringing awareness to them. Yeah. Who are, some type of gender and sexual minority. And there are reasons that we focus on that. And believe me, I am the first person to want to say, I want to live in America where we put it behind us. We just don't care anymore. Right. But we're not there. Well, you have cancer. You have to talk about cancer. When you're cancer free, you can stop talking about cancer. Okay. So this is why we talk about it. And this is why we bring attention to it. And Ashley, I love, like you said, just doing it the loving way, doing it the great way. Big win for her. Dealt with a lot of people trying to keep her out. There was actually an opening for this position by appointment last year that she was passed up for, and kind of had to go to the voters to make it happen. And the voters, I got to tell you, I know it's Massachusetts, but unless you are dealing with the blue Boston center, you're looking at some red state type counties. And it takes a lot to get over for people to get over it. I mean, I wouldn't say that I don't know what I would have thought. I wasn't aware of the concept of transgenderism until I was kind of in a point where I was okay with it. So I can't say specifically what I would have thought. I was never anti-gay, I guess. So I hope I would have been okay, but maybe not. Maybe I would have been one of those people that was not cool with it and needed to become cool with it, needed to be educated about it. There was a lot of learning I had to do about the difference between gender and sex. That's one that when I started learning about, I was like, what's the difference here? I had to learn about all that. I guess to your general point here, there was over 150 wins for libertarians across the nation, 100 of them in Pennsylvania alone.
Yes.
Yeah, LPPA, go ahead and take a bow. I know that they have been the center of controversies before. You know what? Regardless of where you stand on that controversy, they made a game plan. Jessica, I believe, was the leader of that. She pulled that off. I can't even believe it. And this tends to happen when there's not a president on there, that libertarians win a whole bunch of seats, not because people stay at home, people still show up and vote, but because there's not that air of, well, it's just too important to let this president win or this person win. I'm sorry, this is just too important. No, guys, libertarianism is too important to lose. Believe me, your clone Republicans and Democrats, they will never be too important. They're happening. It's the same. Anybody that thought Biden was going to be different than Trump, how are you feeling a year into this thing? How y'all doing? It's not meaningfully different. And there are some things that have changed. There's some things that have gotten better and some things that have gotten worse, but it's not meaningfully different. And ultimately, I think, sir. Yeah, it's time to say that meaningful differences can no longer wait. It's time to just be impatient. If you do vote, if you do participate in politics, go gold, go something else. Follow your heart. I'll even say that. Follow your heart. If you feel that truly somebody is a great liberty person, as long as you haven't deluded yourself into thinking it's like Trump or Biden or something, go ahead and do what you got to do. I understand making the best decision to protect yourself and your loved ones at the ballot box. I hate the nature of politics that a lot of times in choosing that, you have to think about someone else's loved ones who will be harmed by your candidate or policy that you support at the ballot box. It's tough. Voting's not simple. It's difficult. But I am glad that we are at least at a place where people like Ashley can make a landmark win. I believe first transgender person in the state or something to be elected to office. First libertarian in her county to be voted to office. I'm just incredibly impressed. That's a lot to overcome. And she does not shy away from it. I think I have several transgender friends who don't want to be introduced as transgender friends. They just want to be that. Well, yeah. Ashley's like, I am transgender. Boom. Let's talk about it. Front and center. I am not scared. And I love her fearlessness above all else. I'm really happy she won.
Something that she said to me recently, we sat and had a really long conversation about her transition and all of that. And, one of the things she said to me, she's like, I'm a big girl and I was a big guy and I have played, she's played professional football. Yeah. And like, she's like, so not just physically, but, out politically, socially, whatever. She's like, I'm a defender and I want to put myself on the front lines because I can take it. I can take the hits. For those who can't or don't want to or are scared, I got this. And that's one of the things that I adore about her is that she is fierce and loyal and it's all love. And I love that so much. Yeah.
Yeah. Brian shared the Godzilla attachment for those. I've talked about enough at this point. Brian, I want you to go ahead and issue some statements on this. I'm going to look up something that I can post on the page here about the USA Today attachments because it's too funny not to.
I'm incredibly proud of Ashley and all the other libertarians who won this weekend, and also for our liberty-minded friends both on the other two major parties who hopefully will start seeing that COVID and a whole bunch of other things that are going on in this country have made people far more interested in liberty choices such as, possession of firearms, Second Amendment rights, school choice, those other things. They're becoming more normal. They aren't looked as crazy. And I think the Virginia election, even though they wrapped it up in CRT and things like that, really, McAuliffe saying that you didn't have a right to be able to dictate what your kids learned. I thought that was a brilliant moment and a Clinton-esque type of thing. So again,
but the result is,
I know, but you know what? Terry McAuliffe or Youngkin, that's pretty. That's Trump and Hillary, just slightly, but not much better. So, and that's what we got to get out of. Realize that there are better people out there. Not longtime politicians, not political lackeys, not people with questionable pasts. Let's just start finding good people to run, and then let them run for a couple of years and let somebody else who's just as good. And I know plenty of people on the left or right who would love to see things like term limits enabled. So, hey,
be a Republican or Democrat, but send your best. And have the awareness. Have the open your eyes and look at these candidates and say, is that our best? Just seriously, stop focusing on their guy. Look at your guy and say, is this our best? Just that's all I'm asking.
Yeah. Go ahead, Lou.
Sorry. Oh no, I was just, and it was just in passing. You mentioned term limits, and I don't know if you guys read Hannah Cox's piece on term limits recently. I think it just came out this week. It's fantastic. We should totally discuss that at some point.
Oh yeah,
mark that for another episode. It's so good.
I mean, just what Brian brought up, critical race theory. We probably should talk about at some point.
Yes.
Term limits, another good one. I mean, heck. Hannah Cox is doing the rounds. I'm sure we could probably get her on the show to talk about one of her articles or something.
Hannah, please come on and talk about it.
She's another one that I think most non-nutty libertarians like. She does simp for the Pauls maybe a little more than I would enjoy. But
right for me. But she has some really fascinating takes on things because her perspective and her experience working on the Hill as a lobbyist. I mean, she's She's got more experience than a lot of us will ever have. Let's be honest. I don't always agree, but she's a smart girl.
Yeah. And I would say, I think a lot of times, you know, how like the libertarian policy, like disappears kind of when you sent for the polls or something like that. I think her like her social progressivism is very front and center, and so it's not one of those things like she's scared to talk about it because she might anger her conservative crowd or something like that. So
right.
I take her as genuine. Like yeah,
she does think for herself. I will absolutely give her that.
Yeah. Well, thank you all so much for joining us on this episode. This was a well-attended episode. We are always, we get more and more viewers every day, although this one looks like it's just already kind of breaking the limits here. I'm sure every week when we increase in viewership, it's fantastic, and I'm loving it. This week I think broke some kind of barrier. I'll have to make sure to talk about something as spicy. I mean, maybe critical race. Keep this train going.
Let's just do it. Let's just do it. Let's get Larry on and
No, I do want to. It makes me feel special because, you know, I've been out for a couple weeks after surgery. I'm like, oh, they're all here for me. No, I'm kidding. It was totally the drama. But I do want to say we did have a handful of listeners who reached out to me. Thank you very much. I appreciate all of your love and support.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even reach out to her. I was like, damn it, Lou, get back here now. I don't care what kind of city. I don't care if you can't hear. Do you think I listen to you when you're talking? Let's go. No, it's terrible. How awful. No, Lou, I'm glad your ear is doing better, although still not perfectly, but let's keep that going. Yeah, that's you got a nice scar for it to show off to everybody, but not noticeable, and that's a good thing, right? Behind the ears, so you actually have to show
which
it
is
off.
really funny. Literally the next day, I was getting advertisements for the Van Gogh experience in the museum in Chicago. I swear to God.
I could just see somebody sitting there going, "What hashtags? What keywords should we be looking for?" Ear severing. Anyone's had an ear severed in the last 3 weeks? Pound the ads to them.
Like some very specific keywords for that targeted ad.
Hey, I know somebody got that. That's like the one time the algorithm actually works. They're like, I programmed this thing for people that have ear slicing. I found one. Oh my gosh.
There's 3 million. I'm sure there's like 3 people. Somebody's gonna sit there in a marketing meeting going, see, I told you we had to put that in. I got 3 people.
See that bump there? That's my 13 cents. See that? That's me. I programmed that in there. Oh, this is one of our best episodes ever, and we continue to get better as we continue to mesh. Lou, we are glad to have you back. Brian, love you every week. Lou, I'm sorry. We actually got to do an episode on Brian's birthday. Sorry, we're not going to get to do it on the very day of the birthday, but again, the trees, please check it out. I will actually, Lou, if you want to send me that link after this is done here, I will post it in the description. So if you're listening on a podcast, you will have a chance to see, and you can donate. And there you go. And we will make sure that everybody's nice and educated. Next, now I don't want to get anybody's hopes up. They did say they would let me know to reschedule. They did not say next week. So Larry Sharp is coming, but I do not know when. You may have something equally spicy. I know that this got a lot of views because it's Kyle Rittenhouse, but if you are a first-time listener, we always talk like this. Like there's some great conversations happening about subjects that maybe you might not think are spicy, but are important to people. And so please continue to listen and join in. I am happy to challenge the main show every week. We're going to be passing about 1% of their listeners any day now. And that's going to be huge for us. And people are going to, I remember when I was listening at episode 28 when they were 1%, and now they're a whopping 3%. You know, you want to be part of
true libertarians.
Like true libertarians. You want to be a part of this. I know you have a lot of podcasts that you listen to. So in all seriousness, I do. There's a lot of work that goes into this. Brian and Lou take a lot of important time away from their families and their day to make this happen. And it's a big deal to us that you have your choice, and we want to make sure that your choice is honored. Please let us know if you ever want to see anything in the show, anything we want to talk about. We certainly take requests, especially among viewers. I love you very much. Everybody take care. I need to develop a tagline when signing off. I've been told that already. I don't know what it is. So for now, kisses, everybody. Love you very much. And we'll talk to y'all later. Mwah.